Imagine being trapped in your own home, scared, hurt, and unable to call for help, and all because no one understood my language. Well, this is the reality for many deaf people experiencing domestic abuse. They face barriers at every step: no interpreters, no deaf-aware services, and no access to vital information. Here in Bolton, we're working to change this. A new deaf-led face-to-face support service is on its way, where deaf people will be seen, heard, and understood. How can we improve accessibility for the deaf community and ensure that interpreters are fully prepared for these sensitive situations? Claire Mason runs Domestic Abuse Services Accessible, a training programme working with professional BSL interpreters here in Bolton. And this training is already making a difference.
I started domestic abuse workshop CPD for interpreters about 5 years ago, because at that time I worked as an IDVA for 9 years. I'd often work in court or for social services, and I would see interpreters actually lacking the knowledge or expertise about the topic of domestic abuse. So when I finished working as an IDVA, I decided to set up workshops to train interpreters to how to interpret and deliver it into BSL. I'm a deaf interpreter and an IDVA, so I have that combined knowledge and skill set. For me, that's vitally important that the deaf community can fully understand the interpretation of domestic abuse. The content of the course will depend, but also the skills to interpret such content, the linguistic and processing skills for an interpreter, and how to deliver the topic from English into BSL. But if it was for a group of deaf people, I would be more focused on educating them about what domestic abuse actually means and the knowledge and skills they should expect from interpreters working in this domain. I also train other bodies such as police, social services, the courts, to make them aware of the importance of using interpreters and interpreters with this knowledge base of domestic abuse. The challenges that the deaf community face to domestic violence is the access, the lack of it. The deaf community are an afterthought and not included. The hearing community have access to domestic abuse services, but whether they have interpreter provision is unknown, and the literature that may be given to a deaf person won't be understood like it would if it was delivered in their first language. Really, I feel for the deaf community because I think it is so important they are provided with the right BSL interpreter, not just any interpreter, but one with this specialised domestic abuse training. The challenge will be to find the correct interpreter for these types of situations. For a domestic abuse victim, it can be really difficult for them to know how to tell their story, to be able to contact the police to explain what's happened to them, or for them to know how to contact 999 in an emergency. Or they might worry that because the deaf community is so small that people will find out about their private personal life and spread gossip. Domestic abuse, domestic violence is a very complex, in-depth topic. Before I arrived today, I considered myself to know quite a bit already, but now after today's training, I realise I really didn't know that much at all. Claire showed us a list of words, and some I didn't know the meaning of. For example, like NMO, non-molestation order. I knew roughly what it meant, but after today, I understand fully what it means. Most of the English words I felt I knew what they meant, but being able to deliver that into BSL was more difficult, and over time BSL signs will of course change and adapt to today's society. For example, the term gender, for a long time I've been signing man, woman, but now I sign it like this. It's really interesting. One thing I've really taken away from today is interpreters need to be careful how they sign certain words. For example, the sign for rape. My standardised sign for rape might be the wrong context and mislead the deaf person into thinking what they had experienced wasn't rape because of the incorrect sign I used for their specific context. The trainer Claire Mason was incredible. Claire is a native BSL user, which is really valuable learning from her and seeing how she would sign in relation to this topic. Other courses which have been delivered in spoken English were good, but watching Claire deliver her training into BSL today was amazing. This is the course interpreters should be going on to be able to deliver a clear interpretation of domestic abuse. It's not just about the signs we use, but to have that rapport with the deaf person. As interpreters, it is not good enough to have just a basic level of understanding and interpreting capability for this topic. Domestic abuse encompasses so much more, and the interpretation must reflect this. If the interpreter is unsure of the jargon or how to sign something, then that will cause a massive breakdown in communication between the deaf and hearing parties. The extra linguistic knowledge has helped me to realise that before I arrive at an assignment, I really need to research the job to make myself more prepared to the meaning and the context of the situation I will be interpreting. This will help me to deliver a clear interpretation from English into BSL, allowing the deaf person to fully understand what I'm signing.